Welcome to A Scrap Life, a podcast solely focused on the hustlers, grinders, operators, and business owners who live and breathe the scrap metal industry every day. Here is your host, Brett Eckhart.
All right, we're back. Another episode of A Scrap Life. I get the pleasure today to sit down with a guy that I've started to kind of get to know at conventions, ISRI conventions, talked to him a couple times, and just Jennifer Betts introduced me, and I was like, hey, I want to talk to him. I think that we could put together a good podcast and just talk about the industry in general. I'm sitting here with Jason Glei from ISRI, and I'm just super curious about his opinion on, a few different things on the marketing side, kind of his background. And, as a fellow marketing guy, I always like to, just kind of pick people's brains that are smarter than me. And he's that guy. So thanks, Jason, for showing up, man, and coming to shoot the shit with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, man. And I don't know if I'm smarter than you.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll let time tell, I guess. But that everybody's got their strengths, everybody's got their weaknesses, and I feel, obviously the reason you're sitting in the chair you are today, with the background you are today, is because somebody feels that you're pretty good at marketing. So, let's talk about it, man. I'm super curious what your history looked like. How'd you get from into the position you are today with marketing ISRI? Let's kind of give me a little background on you.
Okay. I came into this the marketing world in kind of a roundabout way. It's interesting. I'm one of the few people I did go to school for advertising and marketing. I'm one of the few is using using that degree.
Where'd you go to school at?
UNC, Chapel Hill.
Okay.
I grew up in middle of nowhere, North Carolina, just outside of a little town called Roxborough, north of Raleigh and Durham. And went to school there, and in all honesty, just like most college kids that age, I spent a good amount of time waiting tables and bartending.
Yeah.
Which in all honesty heightened and helped my marketing career more than anything else I've ever done, I think.
Okay.
Because
And why is that? What's the crossover there that you see?
anybody who's ever waited tables or bartended for any good length of time, that is the best education in people that you can get in watching them, listening to them. What people don't understand about bartenders and waiters is that, we spend a ton of time listening to your conversations, how people communicate, what moves them, what doesn't move them, what they like, what they don't like, and just the kind of people in general, and what motivates them, what doesn't motivate them, and being able to adapt to interact with different people from different backgrounds constantly.
Yeah.
Because it's never the same person coming into a restaurant or bar, ever.
So I've had this conversation with my wife before. I think my wife's had like 100 jobs. I swear she's worked everywhere, and which I can appreciate because she's just a hustler, right? Like it's probably one of the things that attracted me the most to her is that she was like never afraid to like go work and just go, get it, right? And we'll talk about her and your wife there, but I think the biggest thing we've talked about this is she's talked about how she's waitressed and bartended, a crazy amount of different places, and mostly like waitress, like cocktail waitress side and server side. And so she said just kind of how that teaches you how restaurants move and bars and kind of how things work, but just the interactions with people is so important, and it's important to how you're making your living, right? Whether you're getting tipped out or not, or your coworkers, are they supporting you so you can be successful, but just the interactions with people, which she's touched on that before. So That 100% makes sense.
I mean, it's like this little microcosm of society that you get to interact with on a regular basis, and somewhat because the interactions are so like short and truncated,
Mm-hmm.
it also gives you the opportunity to adapt, try new things without a lot of consequences, frankly.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a great education in working and dealing with the public and people in general.
So, Jason, the bartender, I mean, what's the most common cocktail that you serve? I mean, when you talk about, I mean, what do most people like to drink?
Honestly, just beer and wine.
Yeah.
You pour more beer and wine than you do anything else. I mean, bar side, you're going to lean beer. Restaurant side, you probably, depending on the type, you're going to lean a little bit harder on the wine. Um, and then on the cocktail side of things, that ebbed and flowed with the years, man. I mean,
Okay.
when I
Holiday
first
season, like right now, holiday season, what are people drinking?
holiday season, you're gonna get a lot of like the people asking for like seasonal cocktail stuff with cinnamon in it and that sort of
Pumpkin spice.
yes, all that stuff because everybody wants to feel in the holiday spirit and things like
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Especially those that don't generally drink cocktails because if you're a cocktail drinker on a regular basis, you like what you like, generally speaking, you might
Yeah.
veer off and try one occasionally. But
Uh-huh.
like if you drink bourbon, generally you're gonna drink bourbon. If you drink
Yeah.
vodka, you're gonna drink vodka. If you drink tequila, you drink tequila. That's
I, I like it. I like it. I hate to sidebar it too far, but I mean, I'm always curious. It's such an interesting field, and it lends itself to like to marketing in general, right? I mean, because I mean, marketing to me is trying to find how to make yourself relatable to people you want to do business with, right? I
absolutely.
mean, in a roundabout way. So it's like as a bartender or waitress or whatever, I feel like you're trying to make yourself relatable just so that people are excited to stay there, to have you help them, to do business, quote unquote, business with you, right? And enjoy their experience, right?
I mean,
So go
yeah,
ahead.
any bartender that has regulars, that's a business relationship. It is.
Yeah,
There's a lot of personal, wrapped up in it, obviously, but that is, it is a small version of a business relationship.
100%. So you wrap up your degree, North Carolina, and what's next? What do you do next?
Well, I actually started in the promotions department for a radio station.
Okay.
And what the promotions department, especially in the mid to late 2000s, did is that when you heard, K97 The Rock is at, whatever car dealership, come see us, we got the DJ, blah, blah, blah. I was one of the guys who helped set that stuff up,
Okay.
run them, run the remotes, run the events, um, you know, played hype man, for our DJs and that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
And so I did that. First, I did it for a small station out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I had a year-long stop in Tennessee with a rock station out there, and then I ended up actually what initially brought me up to the DC area where ISRI is located was the Clear Channel radio station group. Well, it's iHeartRadio now, but the group out there that did like DC 101 and a lot of the big DC stations, and I was the assistant head of the promotion department for the pop station for quite some time. And that's one of those jobs where like, God, I was only there for about 2.5 years because I got burned out.
Okay.
When you're doing that, especially at the upper level in the department, you have your normal business hours where you're there from, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever it is, sometimes even earlier, because if you got to be there for the morning show, you're up at, you're there at 3 a.m. with the morning DJs. And then when they go home to sleep, you still have your office
Yeah.
hours.
No
Um,
rest for the wicked.
And then 9 times out of 10, we had a night event going on of some kind. Either we were at a bar, a club, a concert, something was going
Yeah.
on. So I was burning the candle at both ends for about 2.5 years. My social life and my work life were one and the same. Like there was no difference.
Is that a salaried position or is that an hourly?
A very, very small salaried position. And the reason it is such a small salary position is because the access that you have. Like
Okay.
in that 2.5 year period, I probably met more famous musicians than I ever thought I would in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, it's just also a really interesting education in people, especially famous people, and how they operate when the cameras are on and when the cameras are off.
So
It's
what's
it,
the takeaway from that? Like, I mean, let's go down the rabbit hole. What's the takeaway from, what a famous what do you see? What's the difference when the cameras are on, the cameras are off?
um with probably about it's probably about a 60-40 split. 40% are the same whether you're on or off.
Uh-huh.
And that's all. 60% I would say are just they're different. Like either you can almost watch them turn it on and off. Whatever that personality trait that's accentuated for the public, you watch it turn on and off when the cameras are on and off. And that was always very interesting to me. And I understand it because I mean, let's face it, if you have like a famous musician who is naturally an introvert,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a very fun interview if he gets in there and does this and doesn't talk and do anything.
Uh-huh.
So you watch him turn it on and he'll bring it out for a while, but then as soon as the camera's off, he goes quiet again, doesn't want to talk to anybody again. But I get that because if you're an introvert and you do that, that takes a lot of energy out of you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're probably stretching your somewhat of your maybe your comfort zone or your normal day-to-day comfort zone. I feel like you see that in a lot in actors, right?
Very
They're
much so.
they're like great actors, but then in their personal lives, they're just kind of like quiet because I mean that is a truly like a something that they have to turn on and that's their work, right? Like they're going to
Yeah,
work. Like it's like same
exactly.
reason we like downtime. We go to work, we bust our ass whether we're operating Cinnabogans like your hat says, or we're running a cutting torch, or we're in an office and we're answering questions and we're doing this, and then we get home, we're just kind of like, oh man, I just kind of want
Mhm.
to pet my dog and drink my coffee or my whatever and just like slide into the
Mhm.
evening.
And what I find with a lot of I guess famous folks is that if they're on a publicity tour or something, their downtime is next to nil. So any moment when the camera turns off, it's like, okay.
So give me one story. Give me like whoever you want. Like give me something funny. Give me something that like you would it would kind of that people would appreciate. All I'm asking is for one good one.
Okay. All right. So, there was a guy coming into the studio, very, very famous hip hop artist who had a bit of a reputation for being, a lot to handle. I'll
We
just say,
can't say the name. Is
yeah,
that
it's just
illegal?
it was P. Diddy.
Okay.
All right, he was coming into the studio just for morning interview spot, nothing fancy, nothing like that. I think he wasn't performing, but I think some of his artists were performing at a DC club later on that night, and he was there to help promote and push that. And so, based off of his rider, which you know what a rider is, right? Okay, it's basically this list of demands that an artist gives at any venue that they're going to show up to and be like, this is all the stuff that better be there and better show up and whatnot. And of course,
I
his
got you.
rider's like 50 pages long with all kinds of weird stuff in it, and just
Okay.
and,
Okay.
and admittedly, a lot of artists put random stuff in there just to see if people do it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
um, and so we were prepared to kind of like so a lot of our interns and staff and that sort of were excited and wanted to meet him, wanted to take pictures with him, but we were being pretty guarded about it and being like, guys, you gotta stay back. Can't, we don't want to make anybody mad. And
Yeah.
And he comes in and kind of does the whole P. Diddy persona thing for the interview and stuff. And but in all afterwards, and he didn't, he's one of the ones, he's one of the 40%. He didn't turn off, but on or off. But he was so nice and gracious to our staff. Like
Okay.
he sat around, took pictures with everybody, and then at the end of it, told all the interns and all of us, they were like, all right, y'all, you're coming to the concert tonight, right? He's like, all right. He pointed to his assistant. He's like, get all their names. They're all VIP. They're all on me tonight.
Okay.
And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. I've heard some, since then, I mean, I've heard some negative stories about him and that sort of thing, but he couldn't have been nicer or more gracious to us when he was there, which was, when you're a staff member at a radio station or even, an intern, some of these folks who come in, they won't even look at you, like
Yeah.
much like shake your hand or take a picture.
It goes back to, I say this, like, I'm I'm a judgmental person. My wife says, Brett, you're so judgmental. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm only judgmental if I've met you and I've had an interaction with you, right? Like I'll
Mhm.
make a snap judgment on you. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying like that's probably something I need to work on. But I
Mhm.
don't really judge people if I've never really met them or had any interaction with them. But so many people will just make a judgment call on, say, a guy like a P. Diddy or whoever, right? And say, but then you at least you've had the ability to say, I've met him. When I met him, my interaction with him was A plus. And so, and I think that if we all just gave everybody at least the opportunity, right?
Mhm.
Regardless. I mean, whether they're famous or just any individual, and just I'll give you the opportunity. It goes back to like an old saying, like I think it was like Gary V or somebody that said one time that was like trust first, like be the first one to trust. So it's like I'll trust you. I'm gonna give you a shot. If you fuck it up, I promise you, like I will write you off so quick. But if you don't, like I will extend the hand. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'm a quick judge of character. Like I'm just gonna admit it's a fault of mine or whatever it is, but I will judge quick and I'll move forward accordingly. And it's almost because in our life, in our business, where we have to, right? We have to make decisions. Sometimes I wish I could slow that down, maybe on the people front, but we're making decisions every day. And I think to your point with a guy like P. Diddy or whoever is give people the opportunity. I think most of the time they'll probably surprise
Absolutely.
you, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And on the on the on the more famous side of folks in that working world, like one of the things I learned, and it takes you a while, but everybody has bad days, right?
Yeah.
And when you're that level and every interaction is under a microscope, of course there's going to be bad ones.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 100%. It's like when you see those pictures of famous people walking around in their pajamas, be like, can you believe they would wear pajamas in public? I'm like, God, if you see how many times I wore my sweatpants.
I was like, dude, I went to Walmart like that 2 days ago. What are you talking about?
Like, I don't know what you're judging them on. Shit, how many times have you been to Walmart in your sweats? Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. That's a good. All right, so here we go. So you just told me something that kind of made me smile before we turned the record button on. Is you said you got to ISRI. Give me the story. You got hired in January, right? But tell me
So I
the
got
beginning.
hired in January of 2020. And
Okay.
anybody who's listening knows that that was the calm before the storm, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
remember that really. I remember that really well.
um, you know, and I came in and they were in the midst of in kind of the middle of the throes around, this time of year planning for this, our upcoming convention in 2020, which never happened. But I came in with all these, getting hired there, I had walked in with kind of some plans that I wanted to put in place and had presented during my interview process about, hey, based on what I've seen, and I know I'm not interior, but this is what I'm seeing here and there, and this is what I want to move here and there. And basically that, that 2 to 3 year plan I had put together, I had to go, well, that's not happening.
Time for the pivot. So
Yeah, well,
what did they
and
hire you? What when they brought you in? I mean, what did they hire you to do? What's your? I mean,
well, they hired me to start the marketing department
okay,
because ISRI didn't have a centralized marketing function within the organization at all at that point. It was done. It's not that they didn't market; it's just that different departments were marketing their own products and services the way they seemed fit. And anybody who's worked in a organization that has a lot of different departments and different functions, if you're marketing them separately, it's very, very hard to create a singular picture of what something is, right? It's
yeah,
like, it's like telling five different people to draw, like verbally, to all draw the same picture and expecting them to look alike. That's not going to happen.
yeah, for sure.
Um, and so I was brought in to kind of centralize that marketing function for the organization, talk to the different departments about what their goals were and what they were trying to do. Um, you know, Not come in and like, trash everything that anything was happening or anything like that. It was more about, okay, you're doing this, this is working for you. All right, let's keep doing that. But how about we make it look like this? And oh, by the way, they're doing this over here, and that matches up well. If someone needs this, they're probably going to need that too. So let's, bring that together and create I hate this word, but create synergies across the organization.
Yeah. Well, just to make it look similar, make the message, across the departments a similar message. So when you say like you had to rip up the plan, what was the biggest pivot point? I mean, what did you have to do? I mean, was it from a physical in person to everything now went virtual? I mean, when you had to start and and grow and build, I mean, what was the biggest change?
I mean, this was a huge part of a thing with ISRI in 2020 that frankly was we were one of the few organizations that actually had pandemic insurance against our conventions.
Oh wow.
I mean, of course, and it's one of those things that was like, an extra line item on the insurance you take out for any event, and it happens that, ISRI had always checked that, and this was the one time where it was like, whew, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um,
Gives you a little bit of breathing room, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what it created, in all honesty, for us. It allowed us to put together, you know, a smaller scale virtual program, that one of the thing and I'm gonna take a step back. One of the things that happened during that time period, particularly with ISRI, and this is very, very unique for an association, we actually grew through the pandemic, which was really strange for a membership based organization that in a lot of, anybody, doesn't matter if it's this industry or another, lots of times your membership dues to something come out of what I would call a disposable income line item within your organization. Generally speaking, it's not something that you're like, okay, this is an absolute must have. But what was different was that more than ever during that time period, our members were looking for, they wanted to network, they wanted to connect with each other, they wanted to reach out and make sure everyone was okay. They wanted to extend the helping hand in any way that they could, if at all possible. And at the same time, they wanted to make sure that their doors stayed open.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I kind of had my thought process on, where I was going with it, but I was curious to let you get,
And so what we did by that is, initially we set up what was basically a weekly town hall. It was all based off of Zoom, and anybody who was a member of ISRI who wanted to pop on and start talking, and talk about what was going on where they were, um, that's what it was for, and it created a network, and one of the things I saw that came out of it wasn't necessarily like there were some solutions that came out of it, absolutely. But more than anything else during that time, I saw a community that was built, and there was a lot of comfort found in participating and utilizing that as a way to connect.
interesting.
Um, because, obviously, during that time period, the world was in a tailspin, right? I mean, there was so much insecurity everywhere that, like, we were trying to we inadvertently and purposely, I think, created this little bastion of comfort for the industry to take hold of, which they found very, very useful. And those that were running into, local issues about whether they're allowed to be open or not, were finding folks that had found ways to do it on their end, that they're like, oh, well, can you send me a copy of that letter?
Yeah.
Absolutely, no problem. Here you go.
Where did the recycling is essential come from? Did it come out of those meetings?
Yes, it absolutely did. That entire campaign was built in part to get the federal exemption for our industry to be able to stay operate normally.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was an extremely critical part, and I think really the linchpin that helped us grow through the pandemic. They're like, oh wow, okay, these guys actually can. They're taking
Well, I
they
think
take
people probably saw it. I mean, I think what you're saying is correct, but I think also people probably saw it as if I got to join, and group together with these other recycling companies, there's probably power in us all saying the same message. Going back to why you started ISRI at the beginning, trying to get all these departments to speak a similar language, right, in their own words, but a similar language. It was important for the industry at that time to speak the language of we're essential. You need us. You need us operating. You need us to have our doors open. And certain geographic areas felt that more than others, right?
absolutely,
Well, your
yeah.
more liberal cities and states, they were it was a little tougher go
Mhm.
versus, let's say, states like Idaho and, Texas and wherever else where they're like, I mean, we didn't close our doors. But I know a lot of people that they didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think
Oh yeah, you have somebody
it
from a
depends on the,
city, county, or government at your
yeah,
door going, lock them.
yeah, or there's $1,000 fine every day you leave them open, right? Or whatever
Hmm.
that, whatever the case may be. And so that's when it becomes, I always felt like my issue with ISRI was always that it wasn't as much local, it was more of a national organization. They looked out for national um uh national like issues, right?
Hmm.
And I think that part of that is like on a local basis, there's just too many different locals, too many different local rules, laws, governing bodies for even a national organization to really meddle too deep in that, I think. And so that I understand. And but it's taken me a while to get there, if I'm honest. But I think that is a good example of where, you maybe they're not going to say, come and to the city of Boise and say, hey, ISRI's not, and say, we're important. You need to keep the doors open for United Metals, right?
Hmm.
But your ability to kind of group together, band together, and create some sort of, you know, um, theme, some sort
Hmm.
of, speaking the same language, whether it's marketing or whatever it is. Like, I could see the value in that.
And during that time period, that's also where, at a national level, admittedly, our ability to address, hyper local issues, we're not there. But at the same time, we also have chapters, right?
Yeah.
And those chapters, the ones that are engaged, and that's where that can happen. A lot of our chapters are starting to bring their own uh lobbyists on within the chapter to address those local issues directly. And
Hmm.
through the advocacy department, at ISRI, we're providing those lobbyists with kind of direction messaging to make sure that everything kind of stays cohesive on the national level as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and because let's face it, what's happening in Idaho is not the same thing that's happening in New Jersey. It's just
No,
not.
no, it's a very, very different. And that's why I was saying, like, if I'm honest, and I'm not good at much, but I try and keep it pretty honest.
Hmm?
And and part of that, like what I said, is like that was always my, but until I understood the function of it, right? And as I've gotten a little bit older and trying to kind of look out from a more broader perspective, I can see why it would be, that's a tall order for any big company, right? I mean, to be able to, because the reality of it is ISRI is a big company. I mean, they're an
Mhm.
association, whether nonprofit or however you want, but how many
Sure.
employees is ISRI? How many people?
We have 54.
Yeah, spread out across the country, right? Like, or you're managing issues. I mean, you're concentrated in DC, right? But your issues are spread out across the
Very
country and
much
then
so.
across the world, I assume.
Very much so. Yes.
Members of ISRI span how many countries?
God, you caught me.
See, I told you there's a gotcha moment in here somewhere. Though.
I mean, admittedly, country-wise, I'm pretty certain we're in something like, well, we're in over 50. I know that.
Yeah,
Uh, if not more. Because pretty much if you're dealing in the recycling industry at all or engaged, most likely we have at least one or two companies that are engaged with us. Um, we also work very, very closely with BIR, which is the Bureau of International Recycling. And the majority of the folks that are engaged there are engaged with us as well.
gotcha. Are you going to, like, have you attended like the BIR? Have you attended those conferences?
I have not personally.
Uh-huh.
On the as we start to grow and expand, I will say that the prospect of moving bigger on the international stage is one of the things at the forefront for us as an organization. I think we're still, if you look at the concentration of our members, we're still very much United States, Canada, a very domestic geared association with and a lot of our international engagement is runs along the lines of import export from other countries and this sort of thing and dealing with those regulations. But on the international level is, you we look at it as, you gotta move where things are moving, right? And if
Yeah,
things are moving international, then you're either part of the conversation or you're on the menu, right?
yeah,
So
100%. Yeah,
we want to be in we want to be part of the conversation. And so we've on the advocacy side of things and on the even on the international relations side of things, there's been some staff additions even over the past year to enhance those that presence.
gotcha. And that's in order to just in order to collaborate more tightly with, say, like the BIR, or is it to in order to form, say, one larger organization, or what does that
It's
future
it's
potentially look like?
it's all the above, honestly.
Okay.
Because there's not one linchpin to it other than to say, for our domestic geared members, we want to ease the import-export burdens, right, as much as we possibly can. We want to work with other countries, that are, frankly, we work with them on adopting standards for material,
Gotcha.
so that when you're having those conversations, you're talking the same language, you're talking about the same thing. Even that is a challenge right now, big time, because if you're not operating by the same standard, then what are you really talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
And setting those at the international stage is critical for commerce, frankly, to happen, in any trusted and honest way.
100%. So let me make the switch on you.
Sure.
So I'm looking at your shirt, right?
Mhm.
And I'm this recycled materials, and I've kind of watched it evolve over the
Mhm.
last couple of years,
Mhm.
um and I'm super curious,
Mhm.
what, because this is marketing, right? Like that's what it
Absolutely.
is. Like we're in recycled materials versus the word scrap or junkyard or whatever,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there's a real push to
Mhm.
make that wording change.
Mhm.
So where does it come from? What's the purpose behind it? Um, let's hear it from a marketing guy. I want to know.
Well, I mean,
Coming
we
from a
we
guy who hosts a podcast called A Scrap Life, I mean,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
go.
absolutely, absolutely. So it's not, you know, we've worked with an outside really language firm to come up with this. And what it, in marketing, it's not what you say, it's what people hear, right?
Right.
Doesn't you can say whatever you want to say, but if they don't hear it the way that it's supposed to be heard, then it doesn't matter. So in our testing, what we found is that scrap as a general word in the public ether, right?
Uh-huh.
Whether you're talking to, the guy down the street who knows nothing about our industry, um, a county supervisor down the street, or a US senator, right? That word in and of itself has a negative connotation in people's minds. And we can talk about the why of that. And I think a lot of it has to do with just, I mean, you could blame it on history, you could blame it on Hollywood, frankly. You could blame it on the mediums that we intake, because let's face it, who hasn't seen a movie where a CD deal happens in a scrapyard, an action movie? Like, we've all seen those.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Um, but recycled as a word always tested well, because you're talking about something like like something that already happened. Oh, this was recycled. This is good. That
Yeah.
it really breaks down to almost just the difference between, this word good, this word bad. And what I've been telling everyone that I talk to about this is that, you know, nobody at ISRI or anywhere is going to come in and be like, stop using scrap at all. No, absolutely not. You want to call it scrap life, talk about scrap, go for it. Like,
Yeah.
and especially in inner circles. Like, I mean, if you have an industry-based podcast where the majority of your audience are basically, you're talking inside baseball, call it whatever you want. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, inside the industry, scrap is not a bad word. Cool.
Yeah.
Have at it. It's more about that outside perception of us as an industry, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and shifting the mindset of people away from, you know, the junkyard or the Hollywood seedy junkyard looking thing, and more into like, oh, recycled materials. That's what my car's made of. That's what that bridge down the street is made out of. That's what the hospital where my baby was born is made out of.
Yeah.
So it's shifting that mindset, and recycled materials is the one that when we did all our testing and focus groups and whatnot, did that. And this was done, not with a lot of with industry insiders, because that's not the audience for it, right?
Yeah, 100, no,
If we're
100,
gonna,
makes 100%. I 100% sense like where you're going with it. And I think sometimes, like I said before, like I like to poke the bear every once in a while, and just because I'm that's just the way it is.
yeah,
But for anybody that knows me, like, and even wants to know the history of my company that my grandfather started, we used to be United Metal and Scrap Company Inc. That was when it was founded. That's what it was, right?
yeah,
And probably 10 years ago, we did a rebrand and I changed it to United Metals Recycling, right?
hmm
And because I wanted recycling, not scrap, right?
hmm
Like that was, and so to your guys' point, right? And you guys have refined it even more to recycled materials, and I get it. And Sako and I have had this conversation a lot, right? I mean, we both have podcasts with scrap in the name.
Sure.
I'm not changing it, but to your point, we're talking inside baseball to people that we do business with and we appreciate and we like talking about scrap. But the reality of it is, you probably say things a little bit different to your grandmother than you do to your friend, but you can talk about the same topic, right?
Yep,
And I feel
absolutely.
like that's probably what's going on, and I'm all for it. I love I'm an and guy.
Hmm
I want both. I
hmm
want to talk scrap with my buddies in the industry. I want to talk to business and our grandfathers and our dads and cutting iron and with torches. Like I want to talk that. And at the same time, I also, when you walk into your kid's school or to, a business meeting or whatever with somebody that's not in your industry, and for them to say, what do you do? Like, what's your job? What's your business? There's a nicer, more refined way of saying it. And
hmm
so I'm all for it. And I'm as much as I like, poking at it, like
hmm
I did it myself, right? Like
Yeah.
I did it. I mean, to a certain extent, I
hmm
changed it. So, what is the challenge that you guys have had getting? Because it's like turning a big ass cruise ship, right? Like you don't
Oh
just
yeah.
go and then go right. Like it takes a while to make that change. And
Yep.
what is the biggest challenge you guys have faced getting people to change that, if any?
Honestly, I wouldn't call it a challenge. I mean, just like with anything, when you're steering a big ship, it takes time. It's consistency over time. Just like
Consistency.
anything else. If you're gonna affect change, you're like, you know, we live in a somewhat of an instant gratification world where everybody wants it now, right?
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, with something like this, when you're trying to shift wholesale perspectives about something and the way something is thought about in the general public's mindset, is that it takes time and consistency and constantly just sitting there beating the drum,
Yeah.
right? Until you get there. It'd be wonderful, yeah, if we could create a viral video that all of a sudden changes everybody. But the truth is anybody that's going for that, to me, that's the wrong goal. It's
Yeah.
consistency over time. Now, if it happens to happen, awesome. But anybody that tells you that they can do that, out of the box is lying to you.
So how do you propose, ultimately, like where does that future look like for the industry, and how long do you think that of the messaging before it really takes hold, or do you feel like it's already taking hold?
I think it already is to a certain extent. The last time we did a fly-in, which is just where a bunch of members come in and they meet with different members of their of Congress, at the local level in DC in their offices to talk about issues. Um, we we utilized this language and a lot of the talking points that we sent along with all of our members when they're having conversations. And the feedback that we got is that this fly-in, they the the folks that they were talking to on the Hill were much more receptive to what they were saying. It's not that the messaging around what we were saying in terms of what we need changed necessarily. It's just how we said it.
Gotcha.
And all of a sudden when people get it, it's like they flip a switch. It's very difficult because of there's cognitive dissonance between like, okay, here's this old piece of rusty metal that most people, when you say, what is this? That's junk, or that's trash, or that's, whatever. And you go, actually, no, that's your car 5 years from now. So it's not just the words, it's also, if you look at what we've been doing in a lot of the materials that we've been putting out, we've changed our imagery too. We've changed, we're using finished products in the stuff that we're putting out into the world. We're using that picture of the brand new car. We're using a picture of a bridge that was just redone. We're using a picture of
rebar, a lot of
a
rebar.
wind. Yeah, we've used a picture of a wind turbine. We've used pictures of hospitals, because that's and it's true, and it's just what we haven't been doing, especially on the image space, is like, don't get me wrong. I love looking at pictures of big machines crushing stuff and doing things. Like I'm a Tonka toy boy. Like, I mean, you give me, I'm like, yeah, I will watch that all day. And my
Yeah.
son's the same way. He'll watch it all day. However, if you're looking to shift the perspective of an entire population around what it is you're doing, you know, we're making the jump to say we made that. That is not possible without us. We made that bridge. We made that hospital. We made that car, and we did.
Yes,
So
100%.
let's take responsibility for it.
Yeah. So I guess it's probably just a matter of getting your, even your smaller recycling. And I tell people this, like, as a scrap guy, right? Like I love it gritty. I love the toughness of our industry. I love all of it. There's nothing I would ever change about any of it. I'm proud of where I go to work. I'm proud of what we do. And even my kids kind of chuckle at me sometimes about, they're like, golly, like, the jeans I wear, the ability I get to do, the freedom I have in doing what I do, and trying to get that message conveyed with a more, well-rounded for everybody message, so you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, right? I mean, if what does the acronym ISRI stand for?
Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries. But even right now, I mean, we're going through a rebranding process.
So, but are you going to leave it as ISRI?
To be determined, honestly.
Really?
Yes. I mean, if you notice the way we've been presenting ourselves recently, like we don't share the spelled out version of it at all anymore.
Yeah.
Even in official documentation, we're just ISRI. The voice of the recycled materials industry. That's what we are. Now, we're going through a process right now and actually, if anybody who's interested and wants to see the final results, they're going to be revealed at ISRI 2024. We're going through a very, very, very studious and well thought out rebranding process, whereby, what comes out is going to be, our identity for the next, 20 or 30 years, related to it all stems from the language project that we started, 2 years ago. Because
how much has your role been a part of that language? I mean, how much of that have you been involved in? How much of that is your undertaking?
It's not really my undertaking. It's primarily our COO, my boss Holly.
Okay.
Holly Arthur has been spearheading that for us. Working with an outside language course called Ms. Lansky Group. They're the ones that did the initial language project for us and did all the testing and how we got to the recycled materials portion of that. And this is kind of just the next step in the evolution.
It was your job then to get people to understand it?
Excuse me?
Is it your job then to, like, obviously you
Well,
allow them to figure out the results and put their 2 cents on it, then your job is to quote unquote sell it?
my part of my job is to package it for sure, but
Okay.
I would argue it's everyone's job to make sure it's understood.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. I mean, it's all of our jobs, right? If we're in the industry and you want the industry to be successful or to be respected, I could see that. So
You know, it's one of those things. Is we're all responsible for that to a certain extent.
yeah. So to I maybe you planned on this, maybe you didn't plan on that, but you're saying here at ISRI 2024 in Vegas, we're gonna hear what that new acronym is,
We'll have the new brand.
the new brand, and we'll leave it at that.
Hmm.
Okay. So you being part of a rebrand, and this is important, a topic for me because ISRI, I think it's made up of a lot of large companies, right?
Hmm.
But it's also made up of a fair amount of small companies, medium-sized
Absolutely.
companies, and
Yes.
they're probably at the same time in the middle of their own rebrand. I'm talking to a guy right now who's got a couple different facilities with a couple different names, and he's
Mhm.
talking about the importance of should I rebrand and create one, right? Synergistic
Yeah.
and what is that? What is the importance of a rebrand? I mean, what do you? I mean, why would someone that's a third generation company that's never really did much marketing or whatever? I mean, where do they find the value in a rebrand or a marketing campaign or whatnot from your standpoint?
Well, from my standpoint, brand to me is how you're thought about, period. Like, I mean, Brett, you have a brand. It's called Brett Eckert, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's your reputation, it's who you are. Organizations have the same thing. And so, I look at it like, okay, it's a bit cliche, but Nike, right? And they have the swoosh or the check mark. And everybody knows what that means. There's value. For some reason, you put that on a shoe, and it costs $50 more, right?
Yeah.
Well, still just a shoe. It's a shoe. It's a commodity. Everybody has shoes, but because of that brand, we as human beings place a lot more value on it and are willing to pay for it. And so, you know, it's not that it's not that you can't do business or can't survive without it. You absolutely can. Of course you can. But I will say if you're looking to enhance your reputation, who you are, and if you frankly, if you have a stellar reputation already, then that makes the process that much easier, frankly. It's that you're just kind of putting a mark and some words behind it. That's it. And saying, okay, if your representation is that you're honest, trustworthy, and you're always, operating on the up and up, then that's what your brand's going to be. And the brand is itself, I mean, from a marketing standpoint, it's just like what we're doing with the rebrand. It's going to be a constant drumbeat. It's got to be consistency. Um,
Do you think that's why
about
people are
telling people
afraid
who
to
you are.
Is that why people are afraid to do it? Is it because it's not an instant gratification, it's a commitment to the process, it's a commitment to, I mean, like you said, you're not going to change if you're a third generation company and you've always been known as, XYZ, scrap or whatever, you don't just flip the switch and change all your signs and change your letterhead, change how people think about you. Like that doesn't happen overnight. So there is some sort of capital commitment that you have to commit to in order to get that. But it's also a consistency that you have to commit to, right?
And particularly in this day and age, I think there's a lot of fear about it because, when you're doing marketing or pushing your brand, I would argue that today it requires a lot of authenticity and frankly some vulnerability too, because you got to let people in. You
Yeah.
got to let people see.
That's a good
And that's
point. Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. That's
That's
a good
scary.
point.
You know, it's not the days of the old, radio voice car salesman just making his sales pitch. That doesn't that, people see right through that. I mean, they know exactly what that is. I would argue that successful marketing and branding these days is a lot more about authenticity and showing the world who you are, which is a scary thing, to put yourself out there and be like, this is me, look at me.
Yeah.
Who wants to be up on the stage? Like, I mean, think about it. You walk out on a stage in front of 100,000 people and be like, this is me, look at me, tell me what you
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It is 100%. That was the biggest thing I had to get over. I tell people that all the time. Like, even for me doing the podcast, or Sacco had to kind of con me into doing my first one on his, and
Mhm.
I saw the value in it for my business, and so I'm like, we all have to make sacrifices in life, right? If you want to be fit, you got to work out, you got to eat right.
Mhm.
Well, if you want your business to grow and you want to, you be well known in your area or whatever, like there's certain things you have to do to kind of create that uncomfort, and marketing and branding and all that is part of it, being willing to put yourself out there. And so I think I'll always have Sacco to thank for that. As much as I like messing with that guy and we go back and forth, we do a lot of business together, and I feel like we have a great friendship that it's evolved over the years. But I'll always thank him for saying, Brett, tell your story, like go and do it, right? And I think that that's important for ISRI, to also encourage people to tell their story. And whether you hire a marketing firm to do that or not, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Um, I know some good ones, but the reality of it is, like, whether you do that or not, you got to tell your story.
Yes.
You got to get out there and tell people why you're good at what you do. You got to get out there and tell people why you're important to your community. I think that's the biggest thing that I hope people get, out of when me doing this. Is like, I just want to, like I always say, I want to lead by example and say, I did it, you can do it. It's super possible if you're
Mhm.
willing to do the work, but you have to tell your story.
And I think one of the most important parts about that, and you touched on this, Brett, is that you have to tell your story. And the reason is if you don't tell your story, it's not that it won't be told, it just won't be told by you.
Yeah.
Which,
And if you don't tell it, then the one that gets told may not be right.
could be good, could be
Like,
bad.
back to our all the way, like, full circle, like,
Mhm.
to the P. Diddy conversation.
Mhm.
Like, if P. Diddy doesn't meet you and talk to you and show you his true colors, or maybe that was his true colors of the day, I don't know.
Yes.
But that's still forever. You'll walk away, you'll know how he treated you and how he
Mhm.
dealt with you, your team, and your people, right? So
Mhm.
that's what you're going to believe. And that's the whole thing about you telling your story and you creating those personal relationships and those personal contacts, is it gives you the opportunity for them to meet and hear you discuss your thoughts, your points of view, how you approach things. You're getting that chance to make that impression versus what the neighbor, down the road says about you.
Or in all honesty, I mean, if you're talking about, if you're not telling your story, but your competitor's telling their story, well, then he can, I would argue he could tell your story too if you wanted to.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do it.
All right, man. So you and I both agree marketing is important. So speaking of marketing, I want to end on this, but I want to talk about ISRI in Vegas 2024. I can't help
Yeah.
but notice your background.
Oh,
And being a true marketing guy, you've never missed an opportunity.
mhm.
So I love it. I love you for that.
Mhm.
But I mean, this one's probably shaping up to be a big convention for you guys, right? I mean, for so
Oh,
many
it's going to be huge.
reasons.
It's going to
So,
be.
I mean, what's this year different to give somebody a reason to come out that is different than last year's 2022 in Vegas?
Okay, so 2022 in Vegas, we're with our events, we're constantly building and evolving, right? And
Yep.
seeing what works and what doesn't. And so with Vegas, the the biggest reason it is the largest gathering of the recycled materials industry in the world. In stop. Like anybody that wants to come at me and tell me that it's not, bring your stats and I hope they're good. 'Cause,
Yeah.
um, it's 6,000 plus attendees, all involved, all directly involved in the recycled materials industry, and there's not a bigger opportunity to expand your network in the world, in terms of doing business, making new connections, making friends, that sort of thing. And in terms of what's new, we have a completely sold out exhibit hall that's going to be filled with the latest and greatest innovations the industry has to offer. One of the things that we're doing this year, even on the expo hall floor, is we're going to have an innovation stage that's going to have demos of products that are up and coming, and really being launched at convention. Um, we're also going to be doing some live podcasting, from that stage,
Nice.
that I've been told you're taking part in.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to expand industry voices, if you will. And one of the things is that we're working on, at ISRI is, there's a ton of good content coming out from the industry, whether it's podcasts, whether it's, short form video, whether it's, I'll give a couple shout outs, the guys over at Sod Metals, the stuff that they're doing on LinkedIn, just with their short little updates. Stuart Kagan out of New Zealand with his Born Scrappy podcast is doing some really cool stuff. And we really want to elevate those voices and really give, selfishly from a marketing perspective, shine a spotlight on those examples of what's possible and what you can do. And it's not these guys are doing anything that unique or that complicated. They're
Yeah.
just doing it. Like,
Well, back to what you said earlier, they're willing to put themselves out there.
exactly.
And there's
And
there's
it's and
there's a
it's paying dividends for them.
yeah,
One of the questions that I get from organizations, like, because occasionally, like, I get phone calls from members and stuff looking for, advice on marketing and advice on what we're doing, or what should we do here? What should we do here? And the truth of the matter is I always tell them, be authentic in whatever it is that you do. Find your internal champion, whoever it is. I don't care if it's the guy who runs your material handler. If he happens to like making little videos and vignettes and let him.
yeah,
And as long obviously, don't let him get you in trouble, but
yeah, exactly.
but
Make sure that there's a message that he's putting out or she's putting out that agrees with how you would like your company viewed, right? I mean,
yes,
if he's an
absolutely, absolutely.
extremist, one way or the other, one side of the aisle or the other, like, and you don't agree and you don't want your company to be known for that, then be
Yeah,
aware. But
I mean,
if it's a passion for the industry, let them go.
yeah, but I mean, and that's where the authenticity matters more than anything else that I can, because I mean, you can spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars overproducing something that looks fantastic, and it will fall flat in your face, and you wasted all that money if it doesn't align with who you really are, because people are going to see that misalignment like that.
Yeah.
It's way too easy. So. Find your internal champions, wind them up and let them go, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's
It's great advice.
Todd over at Sod, basically he's a young 23-year-old guy, and Dan gave him the reins and was like, go do it.
Yeah. Get her done.
And it's, he's they're killing it. Both on the business side, and they're growing their brand and doing it, and raising the level of their brand within their community and within the industry, and and really paving a way for other people to look at and be like, look, well, they can do it. They're not staffed any different than me, or like have necessarily more yards than me. Well, then if they can do it, so can I. And that's really what I want to shine a spotlight on as much as I can, because the more voices, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
more people you get doing it, I've said this before, like you're not taking away from me if you start a podcast on scrap, right? Like at the end of the
no,
day, there's hundreds of thousands of podcasts. Like I'm encouraging people to do it because your story is different than mine, your vision is different than mine, your guest lists, while there's some crossover, will probably be different than mine. And I would say if you're a national company, tell a national story, right?
Yep.
If you're a regional, tell regional. If you're a local company, man, be the biggest advocate for your area, your geography that you're doing business in. Be that guy, like be that girl,
Absolutely.
be that company that supports and is the which then it allows people to support you. And I think there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So
Well, in terms of competition, like I the world is not finite in any way, shape, or form. The world is infinite.
yeah.
Okay, it is. There's not a certain number of pieces of pie. We grow the pie.
Especially the business world. Like that's what
Absolutely.
the business world is different than sports. Sports, there's a winner and there's a loser. That whoever, if you win by 1 point or whatever that is, one run, one whatever, there's a winner and there's a loser. But in business, multiple people can win, and
Absolutely.
that's the way it is. I mean, and I think it has to be looked at that the same from a marketing standpoint as multiple people can win if you're willing to do the work.
Well, and
You get the last thought. I'm gonna give it to you.
okay.
It's last thought, and it could be on marketing, on ISRI, it can be on anything you want. It's once you're done, you're done. But
Okay.
you get the thought.
Anybody who's scared of putting themselves out there, I want them to think, number one, think about the opportunity cost if you don't, because if you're not telling your own story, it's going to get told for you. Number two, the more voices, the better. Please, please. Flying under the radar is not going to work. Doesn't work.
I love it.
If you think you are, you're lying to yourself, as far as I'm concerned.
Tell your story, people. Tell your story.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you taking the time. And as always, I'm looking forward to seeing you down in Vegas come April, right?
Yeah, everybody come on out. It's going to be a great time. We got a great lineup of educations and stuff, but more than anything else with the convention, like there's no greater business opportunity to expand your network in a truncated amount of time. There just isn't.
All right, man. See you in April.
All right, man.
All right, bye.